Hello everyone, welcome to another Sunday. Thank you for following me here down this crazy rabbit hole we've been going on all this time. Let me just get these things out of the way. Number one, this is where you can go to get today's soundtrack at the end. Scientific Sound / Song of Healing. And this is where you can go to make comments or ask questions related to anything about these live streams, which, as I've said before, now covers every possible thing in the entire universe. And here is my YouTube channel where you can see all the live streams I've done since last year, beginning in April, which means we are coming up to close to 1 year at this point. April 5th is when I started this, a month after the pandemic closed the whole world down, and my clinical office was closed for 5 months. The patients I see fly in from all over the world, and they've got the most difficult, tangled conditions that pretty much exist out there, and I'm kind of the witch doctor at the end of the trail after everything else has failed. So I really had to tell these people to stay home because they're the most at risk of anyone I could think of. I kept my office open for pain or emergency, but pretty much encouraged people to stay at home. And I took that time to reinvent myself completely, reinvent all my workshops to be online, which was no easy task. It took 3 months of solid work to do that. And we redesigned our website, created a new second website, redid our sound stores, redid our packaging, and I began these live streams about a month afterwards because I was thinking to myself that people are under a lot of stress from all the things that are happening, and I'm thinking to myself, stress, one of the things that stress does is compromise the immune system, and that's not what you want to have happening in a pandemic. So I decided, I'm the stress meister, that's my brand, so I should step forward and help people with their stress. And that quickly turned into something completely different because, once again, I had been shamelessly manipulated by forces on high to do something that I was here to do, that I didn't know I was here to do until I stepped forward, being tricked into something else. Be that as it may, today we're taking on the task of talking about healing itself and health. And, all of us, every one of us will go on this journey sooner or later. And I would suspect that most of the people who are watching have been already down this twisted path, searching for answers to your own health problems or the health problems of someone you love or care about deeply. None of us will escape it. All of us will face something in our lives that has to do with our health and the challenges that come with that. And this is a subject that people have been, thinking about and grappling with since the beginning of humanity. The mystery of health and disease and the basis of what is health and what is disease and what do you do about it. We see that in the present world, where the forces of the two big yin-yang viewpoints of health and disease that we see played out in the present world, where we have, quote, modern medicine on the one hand with major influx of money behind it, with fancy schmancy equipment and big hospitals and lots of money spent on research for one particular point of view of what is health and what is disease and what do you do about it. And so that would be the allopathic approach, and the holistic approach on the other hand. And the holistic approach has been the approach that has stood the test of time back to the beginning of our ancestors, as far back as you can go in prehistoric times. The mystical aspects of health and disease, the energy field imbalances, the field of imbalances in the mind and the heart and the soul, displaying themselves out in the physical world through how my body functions as a metaphor. And the allopathic view, which is more of a Newtonian physics view, that everything is material, that the body is a solid thing, a sort of a stupid lump of meat that doesn't really know what to do for itself, and the medical doctor has to do for it, and the tools that modern medicine limits itself to are drugs and surgery. And unfortunately, the reason for that is because of the driving force behind modern medicine, which is pharmaceutical companies, whose primary objective is not to get you better, but to sell you a product. It's the bottom line, like any sort of dark field, money-driven, profit at any cost corporate company in America or in the world. It's the doctors and the nurses who, for the most part, are in it for the right reasons and working their hearts and souls to save people and to help them, but who have been trained and brought up through a medical school system that is completely bought and sold and paid for by pharmaceutical companies. So therefore what they teach you to use as the tools are drugs and surgery. And that's what's attempted to be delivered through that system. And the drugs and surgery tend to be there to suppress the symptom pictures that you're presenting and not necessarily dig down to what the cause is. That's more of the holistic idea, where the holistic idea is looking at symptoms as not something to suppress necessarily, but as the indicators the body is putting forth of how the body is attempting to deal with some problem, or to alert my conscious, rational thinking mind that there is some kind of a problem here that should be addressed. It's a smoke alarm going off to tell us we have a fire. And the operating idea should not be to silence the smoke alarm. Although there's no reason that once the smoke alarm goes off and you're alerted to a problem and you begin searching for its cause, that you couldn't use the tools of modern medicine to silence that smoke alarm while you're searching for the cause. And that's where these two systems should be intertwined together. Modern medicine system has unbelievably sophisticated tools for artificially silencing symptoms, but it must never be left to only that as the treatment, and never getting any deeper than skin deep as far as just silencing symptoms. Because the underlying cause is then festering and getting worse and going further downhill, and new alarms will be going off, deeper alarms, more serious alarms, which will have new medications to silence those symptoms as well, until finally the system drops right off the edge into blatant pathology. And then you are solidly trapped in the medical system, where now you do have out pathology, and you need more and more heroic methods in the modern medical system to deal with the aftermath of essentially how you've mismanaged this all along in the first place, and now it's at death's door. On the other hand, the holistic approach it takes time. It takes time for the body to right itself. It takes a certain refractory period of time for the body to go about the business of healing. of rebuilding tissues, of rebalancing the internal networks that have gone awry. So when a patient comes to me with stage 4 cancer, and I guarantee another dozen layers of deep symptoms that have never been addressed, and I have to untangle that. Stage 4 cancer, you may have only a few months left to live, and holistic therapy could take up to a year to untangle things. And therefore, you're here too late for the holistic approach alone to help, except in the area of spontaneous remission. And that is a pure quantum field effect now. Now we're dealing with the idea that holistic health has to do with quantum physics, and allopathic approach, the modern medical approach, is still based on the old ideas of Newtonian physics, which believes that this is actually solid and that diseases are physical only. The idea of spirit and consciousness and metaphor projected from consciousness into the external world have anything to do with health. I mean, it's always been, even diet and nutrition were always poo-pooed as being pseudoscience by modern medicine. People are pretty much told that what you eat has nothing to do with your health, and you can take care of yourself and exercise, that's okay, but that's also not really going to heal you. And this has been going on, for decades and decades and decades and decades. We're all brought up to believe that you just bring your body into the doctor and he'll fix whatever it is that's wrong with you. You don't have to really think about doing anything on your own. Health and disease is some big mystery that arrives from Venus and lands on your body, and we have to poison it, kill it, or cut it out. A whole different ballgame from where we have been since the beginning of humanity, of how we approach what is health and what is disease. And even though we look upon some of those early techniques that had to do with shamans and energy fields and totems and smoke and incantations, not taking into account that for the people of that time, that shaman had power. Those things that the shaman did in order to, whatever ceremonies they did and whatever smoke things they did or whatever clearing exercises they had, if you believed that that had power, then it did have power, just from the placebo response. We know right now that 35% of the people that a shaman would treat would get better, just from the placebo response, because they believed they were going to get better. When we get into ancient practices of ceremony and drumming and chanting and smoke-filled rooms or heat, where we had sweat lodges, which we now know helps detoxify you. These were powerful instances, laying on of hands, Ayurveda, herbs, magical incantations. All of these things had great power for their time, that's where people's heads were at. And it did have power to heal people. It has power today to heal people. Now we just understand a bit more because they have more fancy schmancy tools to observe what happens in the brain and the nervous system and the biochemistry. We have techniques for measuring subtle energy fields. When I was on the faculty of the California Institute for Human Science, CIHS, CIHS was a graduate school and also a research institute for researching the, quote, unresearchable. The whole idea behind that research portion of CIHS was to see if we could put untestable things to scientific scrutiny. How can we measure the chi energy in the meridians on a computer? How can we measure the subtle energy fields in your body on a computer? And things like that. And so that was a good place for me to be on the faculty, teaching what I do with sound and rendering what I do with sound on EEG, so we can see what happens in your brain with binaural beats and brain entrainment, to see what happens in your nervous system and the autonomic nervous system with heart rate variability, so we could bring to scientific scrutiny things that appear to be magical. You know, magic is only something we haven't discovered the mechanism yet. The mechanisms are there. We just don't have scientific tools yet to evaluate and to show what's the underlying mechanism involved. So when we go through the early traditions of the use of magical forces of the universe that shamans and holy and sacred teachers had access to, in many cases through the use of sacred alkaloids, ayahuascas and mescalines and mushrooms and peyotes, to get in contact with the deep forces of this world and have those forces tell you and show you how to use energy fields for healing and for changing consciousness and stuff like that. Now we see that in energy work, Reiki, healing touch. And healing touch is used in major hospitals because it was researched. They researched the physical responses in the body to using energy fields and not touching a person's body, but to change their energy fields for healing. So once it's provable, then it's allowed in the hospital with qualified nurses and blah, blah. So essentially that's what I've been attempting to do with my work in my life, is to bring holistic health techniques with brain entrainment and sound and other things like that to scientific scrutiny, so that I can move this more into a mainstream field of healing where holistic health begins to take its rightful place and be more accepted by a larger group of people that are not just a niche group who already believe in holistic health. People out there with problems who need solutions. As time evolved, more and more sophisticated methods became available. For instance, acupuncture and feeling the vital pulses and these specific types of points all over the body, energy points that could be influenced for health and disease, acupressure, the ancients in Greece and Rome with more and more plant-based technologies, herbs. This came straight from the ancient practices of the shamans from the jungles, where now we have various substances that we begin to explore that might have specific healing properties on the body when given in certain dosages. And this became a whole new level of relationship with the natural world, that the world grows all of the kind of things that you need already. It's there. The universe already did it. According to the general heading of what I call the principle of Gedifadib, God did it first and did it better. When wild animals get ill, they're naturally drawn to the correct herbs by smell to start nibbling on those and eating those. They're drawn to it automatically. The whole pharmacopoeia is out there already, growing everywhere, herbs everywhere. Ancient Egypt, Sekhmet was the goddess of healing, form of the lioness. But this had everything to do with herbal technologies and energy field work, work of bridging the realm between this physical world and the metaphysical realms of the gods, bringing that forth. Back at the point in the 1500s with Paracelsus, one of the grand fathers of herbal medicine, who also admonished his patients for food, good food, balanced food, exercise, sunlight. But Paracelsus was amazing. This guy would, go out into the fields in the morning and gather the dew off of the leaves of various herbal plants and carefully package them in these vials and preserve them with notes on them of the date in which they were gathered. And he would gather the dew off of these herbs in different planetary configurations according to astrology. And your astrological makeup, your relationship to vibrational frequencies in the universe, set the tone for which types of herbs to use the dew gathered under what planetary configurations. Paracelsus was also the one who, had these statements that the potential healer should go and sit in the meadows and sit in the fields and meditate on the shape of the plants. It was his feeling that the plants grew in the shape of the organs that they treated. Their leaves would form the shape of the organs and their general formation of the plant. And, that was the time when the stalks of the plant were used for sinew and bone and ligament and tendon, and the leaves were used for muscle and skin, and the flowers were used for emotional states. Still used today by many herbalists who are really in tune and in touch. Hippocrates, for God's sake. The story of Hippocrates, whose many statements all have to do with taking care of yourself, exercise, sunlight, good food is the secret of health. He said, pay attention to the spine. It's the secret of health. And the spine, of course, that's a whole chiropractic thing. The communication network between centers in the brain, trying to communicate to all the different systems in the body, receiving signals back from those systems into the brain. And if that network is impinged, the communication network, through spinal misalignments, then you end up with ill health. All the way back to Hippocrates. The whole idea of the Hippocratic Oath, that at the very least you should do no harm, which brings up the whole idea that modern medicine takes the Hippocratic Oath, and it's a big hypocrisy, so to speak, because the whole system is constantly doing harm. That if all I do is silence symptoms, I'm doing you harm by not digging deep enough to find out what's wrong with you and addressing that. And the medications I'm giving you are causing harm. Only one of the effects of this medication is the beneficial effect I'm giving it to you for. All the other effects that we call, quote, side effects. Excuse me, they're not side. They are effects. And those cause significantly damage to parts of your body, and in some of the cases they kill you. That is not obeying the Hippocratic Oath in my book. But on the holistic side, this pretty much sums it up, this little one here. Our bodies and each system within should be treated as a whole, not as collections of its parts. Holistic health addresses the mind, the body, and the spirit. It searches for the underlying cause of symptoms rather than simply covering them up with medications, and it allows you to be health. So back to the idea of what is health and what is disease and what do you do about it. From a holistic standpoint, that is a question with many layers of answers, and all of those layers of answers are intimately intertwined with one another. I think if I said before in previous live streams that this idea that we have to have healing on a mental level, self-defeating belief systems, on an emotional level, that I'm traumatized in my emotions, and my emotions are expressing themselves as physical symptoms, or my self-defeating belief systems are making me feel a certain way and harming me emotionally. I'm not good enough, or I'm bad, or I need to be punished. I have an emotional feeling about who I am that's not a good one. So this displays itself into here, and this displays itself into my physical body as symptoms, all intertwined and tangled up together. And at the deepest layer is my spiritual imbalance, which I think is the core where all of this stems from. As I see with patients, I mean, one of the blessings of my life is to have been in practice helping people for 40 years now. That's a long time. I can't believe I've done anything for 40 years, and I can't believe that I'm the same age as old people. It sneaks up on you. Spirit has no age. Under the hood, any person you see with gray hair is the same person they were when they were a kid and when they were in their 20s, looking in the mirror in a state of amazement that this much water has passed, and you have all of these amazing experiences that have formed your character and personality and your life. But one thing that I've seen over and over again is the deepest healing responses that I see with patients is after a series of rebalancings and clearings that happen physically, physical symptoms begin to go away. I have physical detoxifications that happen because they've been stuck there for a long time, and as soon as you start to unstick this, they start to emerge. But then there's a series of emotional detoxifications, traumatic emotional engrams that are still stuck in the unconscious mind, in some cases all the way back to when I was a child, that I've been carrying around, and that holds my energy locked up there and festers and creates physical symptoms from that. And then when those release, there's emotional releases, which is kind of the emotional body detoxification idea. And then there's mental detoxifications. There's self-defeating belief systems that have to be eradicated. Oh my God, mom and dad didn't get a divorce because of me. It wasn't my fault after all. And therefore, I sentence myself to a lifetime in jail because of being such a bad boy, for doing such a horrible thing to the family, that I will set limits to how much health I can ever have, or how much love I can ever have, or how much success I could ever have. And when those opportunities present themselves, my subconscious mind can come forth and sabotage my relationships, or sabotage my health, or sabotage my job, or my abundance in any way that is necessary to keep me in my jail box. So it's a deeply mind-boggling experience to go back and relive one of those core self-defeating belief system moments and have that blow away, because I now have my present level of adult understanding superimposed on a previous experience when I was 3, and realize from my adult part that, oh my God, this had nothing to do with me. This was not my fault. And then all of that charge blows away, and my jail cell blows away. And now the universe begins to present me with all of these opportunities that it has been trying to present to me over all these decades, but it couldn't because I was in a locked jail cell of my own making. And now my experience is a series of serendipity, synchronicities, where the doors just seem to be opening by themselves, and I'm meeting just the right people, and opportunities begin to just flow to me as if by magic, all because I'm no longer in jail in myself. And then the one step deeper than that is the spiritual issue. And to me, that always has to do with, the fact that we're here on earth walking our path in life. And the path that is the best path for the smoothest, quickest development of my soul, of why I'm here, why am I alive, why did the universe create me as a specific puzzle piece that fits into the hyperdimensional puzzle of the universe, where every puzzle piece is necessary for the whole universe to hold itself together. I'm important, and my job here is important. And if I'm not searching for what that is, if I abandon that, and I'm over off the side of the road twirling around in something else, then I'm in pain. My spirit is crying in pain because I'm not on my path. I'm lost in the woods somewhere doing something else that is not contributing to why I'm here. And that's where the alarms are going off to try to alert me. Please get back on this path. So it's like we're fated to walk this path, and we're fated to come to a fork in that road. And we're always fated when we arrive at that fork to make a free will decision, where our fate is to continually be confronted with free will decisions we have to make. This one or this one. And the one path is for the betterment of my soul. And it requires me to have faith in the universe, to have a certain level of faith in the process. That pathway is always my heart's yearning. And my mind comes in and tries to figure out, just for safety standpoint, how is it all going to work out for me if I make that decision? How am I going to make a living and be safe and make my way in the world? And I can't see that. I can't see how that's going to make it work. On the other hand, the other path, the one that my, adults in my life and my mentors are whispering in my ears, take the safe path. That one's logical to see how it's going to work. You graduate and you go to college and you get a degree and you get a job and you have a stable income and you get vacation time and you blah blah and you work towards your retirement, and there's a clear linear idea-based strategy in that path, the path of, quote, safety. And as soon as I take that path, then the pain begins. And that path, of course, leads to another fork. And each time I take the left fork instead of the right fork, path of safety, path of safety, path of safety, the pain in my spirit deepens because I'm off the side of the road now, circling around, doing something that doesn't have anything or little to do with why I'm here, why I have been manifested in the universe for some purpose. I've abandoned the heroics quest to find my true nature and to fulfill my purpose for being a puzzle piece in the universe, so to speak. And when that detoxification takes place, physical detoxification, emotional detox, and self-defeating belief system detox, and spiritual detox. The spiritual detox is teleporting back and reliving the very first time that you ever chose the left path instead of the right one. And digging down to find out why. Why did I choose that path instead of this one? Why didn't I follow my heart's yearning? And it all has to do with fear. I was afraid that I couldn't see how the right path was going to make me safe, to get me to a place where I would be able to make it. And the left path, although that's a path of no guarantees, and now we see, you can't do what you used to do in the 50s anymore, which was a contract between you and a job. You would work there for 30 years and you would get a pension, and you'd get vacation time and health care coverage and maternity leave and all the rest of that good stuff. And you could have one person who works in the family make a good enough living that you could have a house and a car and a savings account and take vacations and buy stuff and still be way on top of it and be okay. Now that promise has been broken. Now the average American with 2 people working in the household can barely make it, and they're in debt. There is no safety on that path, and there never was. Yeah. Even the days in the 50s when it appeared to be safe, you just would, like I said before, you get up with the alarm clock and you do the stuff and get in a car and drive to work and work and come home and watch TV, and on the weekends you blow some steam off, and the next week you do the same thing for 30 years until you retire and then you die. That is not fulfilling your spiritual purpose in the universe as a cosmic being who is here to find the core of your true nature and what you're here for. It's a deadly trap that leads to pain and suffering in health, spiritual ill health. But back to digging underneath the fear, underneath that is one more core layer, the layer of where it all leads, which has to do with the fact that, do I believe the universe is a hostile environment that I have to fight tooth and claw for my little spot and then defend that spot? That's the left path. I'm the one who has to figure it out. I have to figure out how I'm going to make it in this world. And the other path, the path that pulls my heart, the right path, has no visible means of support. It's a tightrope across a chasm with no net. There's no ability for me to see how this is going to work out. But that was never my job in the first place. My job is to make the dumbed down decision, this way or this way. And if I choose the right path this way, it's the universe's job to open the doors and to turn the lights green and to introduce me to the people that will make that work. My job was never to do those things. My job was never to figure out how I'm going to make it work. My job was to dance with the universe and to say yes to that dance and allow the universe to dance back with me, to present to me all the opportunities that I require in order to make that path work. Because the universe is a beneficent place whose sole duty is to help me to unfold my path, should I decide that that's the path I will step my foot on. And this is a deep, significant thing, and at the core of that is health, is balance, is harmony, is ease, the ease of feeling non-stressed, the ease of feeling safe, because I'm folded in the arms of the universe itself, who's here specifically to enfold me with love and support and attention, to aid me in doing the job that the universe created me for. So every health issue that I see has that at its true core. And the biggest imbalance in the spiritual realm is, like I said once before, is feeling that that I'm ordinary, that this is all just regular stuff, that there's nothing magical about this or the universe or my place in it, that that's all fables and hokum, when in reality that has stood the test of time in all cultures. From the standpoint of sound, who have used sound to help wake you up, wake you up to that. And healing is the door prize from this standpoint. It's never been about healing. It's been about finding your way home to the nub of the pure decision of, what do I do with this next moment I'm presented with that has a fork? Every moment leads to a new fork. Every moment, every moment, every moment gives me the opportunity to make the right choice. In the I Ching, in the most ancient text on earth, 5,000-year-old I Ching from China, this talks about the point of the decision of the superior man versus the inferior man. The superior man steps forward aside from fear, steps forward joyously into the abyss, because it knows that the universe is there to support me in my decisions when it's correct, when it's right, when it's the yellow path, the central path, the path of knowing of my heart. Even Tesla got into this game at one point. The whole idea of the Tesla coil, which was a step-up transformer of a regular electricity, which of course he invented the AC current that we use on our walls right now, stepping it up to 1 million cycles per second, and developing a healing device from that, because everything in your body is electromagnetic, and he's the Meister of electromagnetism. He created a device for healing the body using step-up Tesla transformers in this device that was called the violet ray. Basically a Tesla coil that generated these high-frequency electromagnetic currents, which traveled through a vacuum tube, and there was a number of different vacuum tubes with different shapes. You apply it to the body, and the frequency of the electromagnetic field aligns perfectly with the electromagnetic frequencies in your body, all the way down to a cell level, and excites the cell into a higher energy state and strips oxygen off of the air molecules, which creates ozone, hyperoxygenates the tissues, and boosts the cell to a higher energy state where it can increase its intake of food, expelling of waste, and rebuilding of tissues. These are pictures of the old portable units. And by the way, this is called high frequency therapy. And the violet ray. So if you do Google searches on the violet ray, you'll see a bunch of stuff. Tesla, violet ray. This was taught in medical schools and used in medical schools for 20, almost 30 years, until the purges of the 1920s by the pharmaceutical companies who attempted to take over the world and monopolize healthcare through the massive money forces of the Rockefellers, who wanted to back the best horse in the horse race of delivering healthcare to the population at large. And he backed the horse that had a recurable product to sell, pills. If I can get you to take a pill for the rest of your life every day, that's a great business model. And if I can force you by law, every person, to take my vaccine shot, that's the best model you could ever have, especially if I can buy a few legislatures and make sure that I can't be sued for the negative health effects that the vaccines might cause. I'm immune to prosecution. Best business model you could ever imagine. This formed the basis of what originally got me interested in becoming a healer. Was an experience I had in New York with a 95-year-old doctor, Dr. Rieger, who had a hospital unit. This is the portable doctor's unit. The hospital unit was a huge thing, a 5-foot-tall walnut case, cabinet, with big dials on it, hooked up to a a wooden chair with arms with two steel balls attached to the arms, and you sit in this chair with your feet on a rubber mat and you hold onto these balls. You're part of this big circuit. It turns on that big machine and big electric hum starts happening. It's a huge Tesla coil. And now you're a part of that Tesla circuit, and it's energizing all of your cells in your whole body in this giant Tesla field. And then he would ground you out with his hands. For instance, if you had a knee problem, he would place his hand on your bare knee, and all of that current inside your body would be grounded out from the inside of your knee out to his hand, into his body, and down to ground through his feet. And what you feel in your knee is, heat building up deep inside your knee, at the deepest part of your knee, which is most difficult to get the heat to, dilating all the blood vessels, resonating all the cells into a high energy state for healing, with mind-blowing results. I mean, I brought my first wife with a knee problem, and a 5-minute treatment. She had no more pain. She had no feeling in her knee for an hour and no pain for a month. Brought her back for a second treatment, and that was the end of it. And that's when I asked him if I could become his apprentice, and he said, no, it doesn't work that way. It will come to you. And it did. Years later, I stumbled on these portable units, and I started building it in my practice, and I've used it ever since. Almost 37 years of using these Tesla field machines, the portable ones. This one here is one of them I've got. This is an original doctor's portable high frequency current unit. I buy this from England, where they take the original units and they refurbish them. So you can see when we open this up that it has all of these glass tubes. These are vacuum tubes, and it's got a controller with a dial. This right here, this is the Tesla coil, this thing right here. And you will take one of these glass tubes and plug that in, and now this glass tube, when I turn this thing on, will fill up with a violet, looks like a gas or a fluid, why it was called the violet ray. And it would create a violet spark with a spark gap. But if I touch it, you'll see this like violet fluid on my hand, and a few seconds later I'll feel the heat way down inside my hand. I'll feel that. On the other hand, if you use this one, it's still the portable device, this one with the metal wires on the inside. These metal wires on the inside make this a much hotter spark. So now the patient will hold on to this, and when you fire it up, their whole body is part of that circuit. And this is more of what Dr. Rieger was doing in New York that I met years before. Your body's part of the circuit, and I'm going to ground you out with my hand somewhere on your knee, for instance. And now it's going to pull energy from your whole field that's now part of this Tesla circuit out through the deepest part of your knees into my hand and ground out through me. When I met Dr. Rieger, he was working 6 days a week in an apartment in Lexington Avenue in New York City. 95 years old, this guy, and he still had brown hair, and he's running around. His apartment was jam-packed with people. And he would run somebody back in the back room, do a 5-minute treatment, let them go, and bring another person in so it moved quickly. But this was taught in medical school. The big units was one of the medical units that he still had when he was doing this in the hospital. All of these things got trounced by the pharmaceutical industry and the American Medical Association. Pretty much pronounced anybody who was not going to medical school a quack, and then went about eradicating all the competition. Osteopaths, naturopaths, acupuncture, herbalism, homeopathy, all were branded as quackery. All the electromagnetic field type of therapies, there was half a dozen different types of electromagnetic field therapy, including Tesla's therapy taught in medical school, all eradicated. There was Royal Rife and his amazing microscope that could view bacteria and viruses. And once he could view them, he could use vibrational frequencies to resonate them like a wine glass, and then intentionally overdose the wine glass with frequencies to make them shatter. So he was shattering harmful bacteria and shattering viruses, killing them with his Royal Rife vibrational medicine device, and getting very famous in the process. I mean, newspaper after newspaper after newspaper, main headlines about his ability to cure cancer and by destroying cancer cells, and giving huge expositions and going to huge, fundraisers and with major politicians and investment bankers and the rest. And it's another example of, the modern medical system, the pharmaceutical-driven system that wants to sell you pills, can't abide somebody coming up with a technique, particularly for cancer and major diseases, that does not involve selling a pill that's taking their business away in some of the best money-making areas of their business, cancer. So, of course, he was destroyed, and his books were burned. His laboratories were destroyed, his devices were destroyed, and he was called a quack. Like anyone else who came up with unique ideas that did not involve drugs and surgery have all been pretty much destroyed. Same techniques. But when we look upon the holistic idea that stood the test of time, of the concept of wellness, of fostering your wellness instead of, and trying to head it off so it doesn't get to a point where we have to make some kind of heroic effort to reach a still spot in ourselves where healing can take place. And this still spot, the still spot in ourselves, the zero stress spot, is what we're seeing with this heart rate variability system I use with biotuning. Is I can see that spot. I can see when the spot is missing. I can see when the sympathetic is on, and it's as far away as possible from that safe place in myself, that oasis, that zero stress place that is necessary, homeostasis, necessary for the healing program to begin, and my body to have the energy back in its reservoir to start working on its list to untangle my problems from the inside out with the only doctor in the house that knows what to do, the internal physician program of my own biocomputer. And even, the word itself, dis-ease, tells the whole tale. A state of non-ease, dis-ease. I've lost my place of ease, my oasis place. I've lost my place of safety. And that is the origin of disease. And I've been in practice for 40 years, and I'm more and more and more convinced that stress is the ultimate cause of disease. And who manages stress? Where's the origin of the stress handling system? Autonomic nervous system. Sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. It's inside here, inside your own brain. And inside that brain is consciousness that's driving the car. A level of consciousness that knows how to grow my body out of two cells and differentiate the tissues and make them all run on automatic without me thinking about it. That's the definition of the autonomic nervous system. Automatic nervous system function. Deep inside the core, at the center of the brain, where this origin of the master program that tells all systems what to do, underlying that is the blueprint. And that blueprint was made by consciousness and read by consciousness. And it's read moment by moment. This magical place, this quantum field zone where my consciousness connects to universal consciousness and aligns me with every other living being, with my planet, with my solar system, with my galaxy, with my universe. All of it is intertwined together. So when most of the people on the planet have an imbalance at the core level, we see what we have. A screwed up world where we've lost touch with our own nature, our own primal nature, our relationship to all life in the universe. We've lost that with all other living beings on our planet and the planet itself, and therefore the planet is dying on the vine in its ability to support life forms, and therefore we are shooting ourselves in the head. And the longer we go down this left path of linear thinking that we can be safe, in this case it's for profit, it's corrupted completely, until we can break that cycle and come back to this holy place in relation to life, all life. We will not survive this. We have to do something about it. So in the center of that here, the hypothalamus. Inside that hypothalamus is these little organelles, and each of these organelles does a different duty. And two of those organelles, like the anterior nucleus, this green one right there, is the origin of the parasympathetic nervous system. This one here, the posterior nucleus, is origin of the sympathetic nervous system. This is where it all begins in the center of the brain, the balance of these two. And it's the parasympathetic nervous system that controls the system, which eventually snakes down through the pons medulla brainstem and becomes the vagus nerve that innervates organs, glands, and tells them all what to do. And it aligns itself, the vagus nerve here, aligns itself with the sacral plexus and mingles together, so the vagus controls this as well. And communicates to the brain what's going on, and the brain sends signals down to balance all these out. And if that's awry, they're not balanced, and we have symptoms, we have problems. This balance of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, when they're at zero, when I'm not fighting for my life with the sympathetic on, or digesting my food and eliminating toxins, when those duties are not happening, the clutch is pushed in, energy is back in my reservoir, and I'm maintaining my health. It's as deep as it can go, below the level of brain cells. Somebody's firing all those neurons in states of consciousness, and my state of consciousness is deeply aligned with my physical processes in the autonomic nervous system. We know that's true. We can see it with things like the default mode network function, where the mind-body actually hardwire come together into the emotional system, into the physical system. It's where mind-body medicine actually physically resides. We're going to discuss this in much more detail the next time when we get into very specific conditions and how we deal with those conditions. ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, autism, epilepsy, PTSD, depression, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. We'll discuss those next time. And we can see how they all have certain elements that are common, that's deep down in consciousness itself, at the central doorway, where universal patterns of balance emerge, where the heart and the mind and the body come together in spirit. And all of it aligns in my DNA. Everything aligns and reaches its safe spot. That's health. That's the song that my spirit sings. An om sort of a sound, a hum, an underlying vibration of alignment of all the harmonics, that is my physical, emotional, and mental bodies, to the core of all things, in the deepest region of the elemental pattern of the cosmos itself and what it's attempting to achieve through the creation of all life forms, including me. And with that happy note, we come to our soundtrack. So, headphones, everyone. Soundtrack entitled The Song of Healing, digging down to this place here, the origin of where all ill health arises from in consciousness itself as it manifests into the universe, who I am and what I am. Eyes closed, and here we go.